If Aprilia made a motorcycle in India, would it have the same characteristics and soul and performance as one that's made in Italy? Well, today, that's what we're going to find out. Hey guys, it's Alan, the Fireman 1028, and today I am back on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I've got beautiful Table Rock Mountain right there behind me in the background, and I'm with this 2026 Aprilia Tuono 457. Now the 457 models, the RS and the Tuono, there's something a little bit different for Aprilia. These are the first full-size motorcycles that are made outside of Italy, and they are made in one of their Piaggio plants in India. So T over at T's Eurocycle called me up and he's like, Alan, I want you to take this bike for a week and I want you to answer that question for our customers and our viewers. Is an Italian motorcycle made in India still an Italian motorcycle? And what I mean by that is, does it have the same characteristics? Does it have the same flair? Does it have the same looks? Does it have the same quality of build as one made in one of the Italian factories? So what we're going to do today is we're going to answer that question by asking 10 additional questions, some subjective, some objective, and we're going to talk about the bike and we're going to review the bike by asking these additional questions to ultimately answer that original question: is an Italian motorcycle made in India still an Italian motorcycle? So before we get started, if you see anything that you like, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Subscriptions for me are the absolute ultimate compliment. Tells me that I'm doing something right. And if you like this bike, share this video with somebody else. So without any further ado, let's throw our gloves on and let's go ride. All right, guys, so the first question we're going to ask is, does this look and feel like an Aprilia? Okay, does it pass the visual test? And you see this bike from a distance. This looks like an Aprilia. This looks like a Tuono. Now, what's really cool about the 457, so this is actually the first of Tuono that does not have a cowl around the engine. The headlight is just kind of sitting there, kind of floating, kind of has that that wasp look, which is actually what Vespa, which is part of the Piaggio group, means in Italian is wasp. So this, definitely with the engine exposed, the low slung exhaust, the nice sculpted swing arm in the back. If you walk up to this bike, this looks like an Aprilia. The shape of the tank, how the tank kind of bulges out in the top, the little side fairing right here, the naked everything on the bike. This looks like an Aprilia. This feels like an Aprilia. The exposed aluminum frame right here, which again, probably the only bike in the category that has an aluminum frame. Question number one, does this look and feel like an Aprilia? The answer is absolutely.
All right, so question number two, how does the build quality feel compared to the other Aprilia motorcycles that are made in Italy? So it's a very good question, and that's the first thing that kind of popped into my head when I started researching this bike, is that is it going to lose that Italian the feel? And I can safely say no. The switch gear is nice and high quality. It's the exact same switch gear that you're going to find on all the other Aprilia brands. It's the same backlit switch gear, which is key, which is very important. It's something that nobody else is doing with the backlit switch gear. The clutch levers feel nice and have the same kind of tactile feel to it. The clutch is very light. I mean, because it's a very, very lightweight clutch with a slipper assist clutch in there, so it's very lightweight. The throttle tube is about the only thing that I say would feel. Maybe feels a little, maybe not as high quality as some of the other. There's a lot of gravel on the road today. Maybe not as high quality as some of the other Aprilia models. It is ride-by-wire, just like everything else Aprilia makes these days. However, it does have a little, it's got a little bit more slack to it, and maybe just does not feel as responsive as what some of the what some of the other Aprilia models do. All right, a lot of gravel on the road. Have to take it easy today. But the quality of the engine, you know, the tactile feel of everything else, the seats, you know, the look of the frame, the welds, you know, if you didn't know this thing was made in India, but by looking at the bike, I don't think you would know, and I think you would just assume it was made in Italy with the there's a lot of gravel, that it was made in Italy with the with all the other, you know, Aprilia brands. Is that salt? Is that sand? Salt? What is that? I don't know. It's a lot of it. Whatever it is. We're going to try to stay out of that today. It's 53 degrees. It's nice and cold. Got my thick leather jacket on, but the tires are still cold. We're just getting started. It's not my motorcycle. Yeah, as far as the quality goes, it feels no different. Now, I mean, there's a couple things like the TFT screen. It definitely does have that looks. It looks cheaper than what the other Aprilia models do. It's not the same screen. It's not the same kind of bonded glass. It's definitely just kind of a plastic screen over top of it. So it's probably going to be, you know, more prone to scratches and everything else. And it definitely produces more glare than what the bonded glass screens on the higher end models do. So, you know, that's one thing maybe you could point out as a cost-cutting measure on the bike. But as far as the engine goes, you know, I'm not seeing any. You know, the castings on the engine look good. The welds on the frame. Again, you know, they didn't cheapen out and give you a steel frame like everybody else in the class. This is still a God's honest twin spur aluminum frame that just like all the other Aprilia models. So, you know, Aprilia was very. They were very particular about what they're going to put their name on, and you know, the aluminum frame is key to the feel of an Aprilia. So to answer the question, does it feel as high quality as other Aprilia models? And the answer is mostly yes. All right, guys, so question number 3. When you fire this engine up, does it sound like an Aprilia twin, or does it just sound like every other parallel twin in the category? There's only one way to find out. Let's fire this thing up. This does not sound like every other parallel twin in the category. As a matter of fact, this is the only parallel twin in the category that is a 270-degree crank. Now, let me explain what a 270-degree crank is. So imagine you got 2 cylinders in an engine. A 360-degree crank means both engines go up at the same time. A 180-degree crank, which is what the CB500F is, which is what the Z500, which is basically almost any other twin in this category is a 180, which means when one cylinder's up, the other cylinder's down, like this. They are 180 degrees apart. A 270-degree crank, what happens is when this cylinder is in the up position, this cylinder is about halfway. So they're more doing like this. And that's what gives a 270-degree crank its distinct sound, but then it also gives it a very distinct engine characteristic where it does, you know, it does kind of act like it has characteristics of a V-twin. It's a lot torquier than what a 180-degree crank engine is, and it feels and it sounds, my gosh, it sounds so much better. Let's throw our gloves back on. It sounds so much better than what a 180 degree crank does. So, like I said, let's talk about the engine a little bit. I don't know if you can hear it with the. Let's leave our visor open. The sound of the engine characteristics and the sound, it is almost worth it by itself to get this versus anything else in the category. I have not had a CB500F. Gosh, this thing sounds good. But I have had a CB500X, which is the same engine. And let me tell you, it's a really good engine. It is boring. Oh my gosh, that engine is so boring. It sounds like a sewing machine, and it's just the most docile engine. There's no grunts, there's no snorts, there's none of that stuff. Now, the reason most companies do 180 degree engines is because it's easier to produce. A 270 degree crank is a lot more complicated of an engine to design and to manufacture and to get the reliability right. So, there's a reason why the 180 degree crank engine has been the predominant engine produced for up until the last couple years here. But this engine sounds so good and it performs so well. Again, this road is sandy. Aprilia first came out with their 270 degree crank engine on the 660 platform, and it has been an absolute success. So they have developed this 457, which is their, we're going to call their small or entry level motor, but it has the same 270 degree crank, and it maintains a lot of the same characteristics as those bigger engines, just in a lot more manageable package. The 660, actually I had this RS 660 on this, the Tuono 660 on this exact same road, and while it was a lot of fun, that engine can get you in trouble. I mean, it's got, it's producing a very healthy amount of horsepower. This engine here produces a lot less horsepower and a lot less torque. But the 270 degree crank is what it really gives it that distinct sound, which separates it from anything else in the category. All right, and that leads us right into question number 4. How does this engine, how does it perform in the real world? It's one thing to have, a stat sheet warrior, but the engine just kind of garbage and really unusable in the real world. But question number 4 is, how does this engine actually perform? And is it up to Aprilia standards? So let's discuss the horsepower, as we were just talking about before. So this engine produces 47.1 horsepower, and it makes that at a little over 9,000 RPM, and it makes 32 foot-pounds of torque. Now, that may not sound like a ton of power, but considering the size of the bike and considering that the category that it's in, this bike still meets A2 regulations, which is a power to weight ratio that is used in a lot of places in the world. That a beginner bike cannot have, an entry-level bike or a first bike cannot have but a certain amount of power per weight. And again, that's more for safety for a new rider. And here in America, we don't have that, but we still get the A2 bikes. So this bike still qualifies under that A2. But like I said, it makes 47 horsepower and it makes the 32 foot-pounds of torque. Now, what's interesting about the torque number is that it makes 82% of that torque as low as 3,000 RPM, which again, you talk about the 270 degree crank mimicking the characteristics of a V-twin. Down low torque is one of the main characteristics of a V-twin, and this engine has it. So, like I said, you get 82% of your torque is available from just barely above idle. And what that makes this bike feel, while it may not be fast, it's quick, and it feels quick, and it feels very responsive, because like I said, you got all that torque and you're down low in the revs, and man, it is an absolute blast to ride. It's a very free revving engine. It's very smooth. I don't feel any, barely any vibrations coming through the pegs. But man, it'll just rev freely. Like I said, from 2,000 or 3,000 RPM all the way up. Oh man, this thing is so torquey. Now again, the 660 motor was an absolute blast. But even with 100 horsepower, you've got to control yourself as to how you ride it. This bike here, you can full throttle it every single turn, every single straightaway, and the only person that knows you're racing is you. That's what I love about these small bikes. They're so much fun to ride. All right, so question number 5. Does the chassis feel alive and playful like what Aprilia is known for, or does it feel like, a turd entry-level bike in the naked lightweight category? Well, I can definitely tell you, just from looking right here, see this right here? That's an aluminum spur, twin spur frame, and which gives it the lightweight and the rigidity in the frame to make it feel light and playful. Now, what you've got up front is you've got 41 millimeter forks, inverted forks in the front. Now, they are only adjustable for preload. And in the rear, you have a pretty standard excuse me, you have a pretty standard rear shock, which is only adjustable for preload as well. So again, you don't get the suspension adjustability that you get on the higher end models of Aprilia, but you still get a really good package. And again, you got to consider the price. This bike comes in at $65.99 MSRP for this Tuono right here. So considering the price and considering the parameters that Aprilia was working in, the suspension feels really good and it feels very responsive. Now the tires are a lot skinnier than what you'll find on some of the bigger models, and Aprilia didn't do us any favors with the tires here. Now I haven't had any issues, and like I said, there's a lot of sand on the road, but maybe the confidence that you would feel with a higher spec tire, maybe like a Dunlop Q3 plus, Q4 plus, whatever the current kind of sport touring sporty tire would be, would make this bike feel absolutely incredible. Now, I understand why they put these, what are these? These are called, I don't know what they are, Pro Torque Extreme HR. So it's definitely a very no-name budget tire, but again, that goes along with the price category. If they put on a Q3 Plus or something like that, it would cost another couple $100 on the bike, which again, it will raise that MSRP. And again, there's probably not a lot of profit margin on these bikes, so they had to put the absolute, had to cut costs where they can, and tires is one of the things that they did. So a good set of sport tires on this bike would do absolute wonders. But as far as the suspension, the handling, the feeling, the characteristics, this thing feels spot on. So yes, this definitely feels like what an Aprilia does. Let's keep riding. All right, so leading right into question number 6, how does the whole package work together between the tires and the brakes and the suspension? Does it have that, that Italian performance first feel to it, or does it feel like a budget bike? So let's ride and we'll talk about that one. Oh, I love the sound of that 270-degree crank. So to have a good handling bike, or to have a bike that's, it's a great all-around package. Again, you have to have all the things working together. So you have to have responsive brakes that have a good initial bite, but don't grab too hard. You have to have a chassis that is responsive and is lightweight and nimble. You have to have suspension that will soak up the bumps, but it'll keep the tires down on the ground and keep your contact patch where it needs to be. Does this bike meet that Italian performance first, kind of comfort later? Let's talk about the suspension part first. Again, we don't have any adjustability except for preload in the forks or on the shock, which again, like I said, considering the price category, I completely understand. I'm sure if you go talk to my friends over at Racetech or any of these companies, they've already developed or are developing suspension parts for this bike, and you could very easily upgrade your suspension. Look at that view right there. Look at that view. Goodness gracious. The brakes, you have a single brake rotor in the front, which is one of the very few, even just visual things that I don't like about the bike. I love, with the inverted forks, you really need that dual brake setup. Now again, it's only 380 something pounds, so I mean you don't necessarily need it, and with only 47 horsepower, you don't necessarily need it. But I something personally about me, I like having that dual front disc setup. Now the brake, I'm not going to say brakes, the brake, it is a 320 millimeter rotor, and it's made by Brembo, which is a Indian subsidiary of Brembo. So by Brembo, So our front brake is a 320 millimeter rotor, and the caliper, it's made by Brembo. Now Brembo is an Indian subsidiary of Brembo. So, if you take the name, it's kind of a play on words, by Brembo, So, again, this is an Indian, market bike that has been imported for the rest of the world. So, it makes sense to have an Indian subsidiary producing a lot of the components. There's the beautiful Little Switzerland Cafe, which I will be having lunch at. What an awesome little place. They got their own smokehouse. They've got a daily special. They got a smoked trout that it'll make you cuss. Now again, we're in, mid-November now, so thankfully we got a nice warm day. So, it's 57 degrees right now, and, it feels really, really good out here on the parkway. So let's let this truck go ahead us a little bit. So again, the brakes, while I wish we had a dual brake rotor set up, here, let's stomp on it here. Woo! That thing stops us with no problem. I don't think a dual setup would have stopped us any faster. That's a good brake. That's a really good brake. It is radially mounted, so you definitely get that more direct feel, and you don't get that flex that you would get with an axially mounted brake rotor, brake caliper. Here's the world famous Little Switzerland tunnel. Oh my gosh, I love this tunnel right here. Let's see what this engine sounds like. Nice. That's a perfect place. That's a perfect place to rev bomb an engine. Oh man. So like I said, the combination of the aluminum frame of the motor, or of the bike. So a combination of the aluminum frame, the Brembo brakes, the inverted forks. Again, like I said, we don't have much suspension, but the weight of the package. When you combine all that together, this is a very, very lively package, and this thing feels so good. It actually it feels better than what I even thought it was going to. I have been very, very impressed with this bike and this setup. This is a fun little setup. And again, look, full throttle. I can full throttle this bike, and I don't have to worry about the thing looping or anything else. That's what's so fun about these lightweight, naked bikes. And this, like I said, this has got just that much more character than everything else in the category because of that 270-degree crank. And again, you've got that engineering from Aprilia. They've got years and years and years of making the absolute best sport bikes and the best naked sport bikes in the Tuonos, the big Tuonos, and then the 660s, and then now this 457. And this thing feels just absolutely light on its feet. It just flicks through the turns. Plenty of, the whole chassis is just very flickable. This would be a fantastic beginner bike, or just somebody's wanting to downsize to something smaller and not have to worry about losing their license every time they go out and ride. If I was on the V4 or even the 660, I could be doing a lot faster, and I can do a lot faster on this too, but I would be tempted to do a lot faster, whereas this bike here, it just loves this low speed, kind of cruising. Again, this is the Blue Ridge Parkway here, so just cruising down the Blue Ridge Parkway. This is exactly, get on a straightaway, open it up a little bit, but then you come into this turn. I know that when I stab on this front brake here, and a little bit of rear brake, I know when I load up that front end, I know those inverted forks, I know those things are tuned to give me a really responsive feel coming through that turn. I know that Brembo 320 millimeter brake rotor is going to respond. I know that lightweight aluminum chassis is going to allow me to flick over and change directions and transfer that weight from right to left. I know it's going to do it, and it's going to do it with a lot of confidence. So the question is does the bike, does the whole package, do the brakes, do the suspension, does this chassis, does it have that Italian, performance first feel to it? And the answer is absolutely. Yes, it most certainly does. 6th gear, going up a hill in a turn, just get up, give it that throttle, or you just feel that thing just pulling, look at that, just pulling right through. 6th gear going up the hill. Man, that's impressive. For a 457, man, that feels so good.
All right, guys, so question number 7, is this bike all-day rideable, and does it have the same comfortable Tuono riding position that Aprilia is known for? So we're off the bike, we're in one of these beautiful overlooks. Let's find out. So we have a 31.5-inch seat height. So we have a nice low seat height. We don't have a seat that's incredibly too wide. We have a nice flat spot, but we have a couple spots on the side here where it kind of slopes in so your legs don't stick out too far. So let's sit on the bike and let's see. So we'll zip up our jacket here, and you see I've got I'm easily flat-footing this bike, and I've got a decent little bend on my knees with my foot on the pegs. It's definitely a sporty riding position. You got your knee in a much higher position, but with the bars, check this out right here. So this is a absolutely quintessential Aprilia naked bike seating position. You got this nice big tank sticking out in front of you right here. You got your bars that come up just far enough. You are leaned forward just the slightest little bit, but not too much. You're in a great seating position. And I can tell you, after riding this bike all day long, this is absolutely all-day comfort. Now, again, you do not have a cowl in the front like what Aprilia has usually done with their Tuonos. So you're getting a lot more airflow coming to you, and it's just kind of raw air coming in. But again, you're not riding this bike at 120 miles an hour. You're riding this bike at 50, 60, maybe 70 miles an hour on the interstate. And at those speeds, it is perfectly rideable, and it's comfortable, and the air is predictable. It's not hitting you any particular spot. You got a nice comfortable seat with no hot spots. You got a nice seating position. You don't have any pressure on your wrist. Everything's nice and viewable. Your mirrors are nice and wide where you're not just looking at your shoulders. You can see out the sides. Your switch gear is illuminated. Everything's right here, easy to get to. Guys, this is all day rideable.
All right, so question number 8 is, do the electronics feel purposeful and refined, or do they just feel like they were added on to check a box to say, okay, yeah, it's got a screen, yeah, it's got rider modes? So that question's kind of a mixed bag. So this bike does not have the bonded glass TFT screen like I think we mentioned before that some of the other Aprilia and Moto Guzzi models have, but it does have a 5-inch TFT screen. It does have rider modes. It's got Sport, Rain, and Eco for the modes, and the traction control, the ATC, the Aprilia traction control, is adjustable for each one through individual modes. It does have ABS. It does not have cornering ABS, but it does have ABS. So compared to the rest of the bikes in the category, yes, this bike has got a ton of technology added onto it, and it feels great. Was it added on just to check a box? No. This is Aprilia technology that they use on all their bikes, and it feels like it's very well integrated. The ABS, while not being cornering ABS and not being controlled by an IMU, is still very predictable. I've stabbed the brakes multiple times, have not had a single issue. I've been pushing this bike pretty hard on some fairly cold roads, and I felt the tires kind of come out a little bit, but I've never felt like I was going to lose it because the ATC stepped in and did its job. So no, I do not feel like the electronics were just an add-on. I do think that the screen could be a little higher quality, but again, you're still getting a 5-inch TFT screen in this category, which is not something that every single bike gets. So yes, I think this is a very well laid out pack of electronics, and no, I do not think it was just added on. So question number 9 is, does this bike give you that Aprilia feel? And what I mean by that is does it give you that combination of passion and precision that Aprilia is known for when you're pushing it hard? Let's see. You know, a lot of bikes, especially in this category, when you start pushing them hard, they really start to get noodly and they really start to lose their composure. Does this bike do that? Is this bike like everything else in the category? Let's find out. Forget me talking about it. Let's push it and let's see. You know, a good sports bike, when you start to push it, it really starts to get composed. And that you know, that firm kind of twitchy suspension that you talk about, and slow riding, it really starts to come into its own when you start pushing the bike. So does this one do that? I'm not gonna do it in the tunnel because the tunnel gets slick. Tunnel gets real slick. Red bomb. So yes, to answer the question, this bike, when you start to push it hard, this bike really gets composed and feels nice and stable underneath your feet. This is a bike that you can push hard, and it rewards you with a composed, I'm getting ahead of you, boss. It rewards you with a composed chassis and suspension. So to answer that question, yes, this bike has that Aprilia feel. Absolutely, this bike has the Aprilia feel. So we've put about 100 miles on this bike today, ride the Blue Ridge Parkway and these various beautiful mountain roads. So the number 10 question is, does this feel like an Aprilia that's made for world markets, or is it just another motorcycle wearing the Aprilia badge? And that's a tough question right there. That's a very tough, honest question that I got to answer. So yes, the bike is made in India. Yes, the bike does have yes, the bike does have Indian components on it. It's got the Bobri brakes. It does not have name brand suspension on it. So yes, it does have components that are made for the world markets, you know, third world countries, India, China, all these different countries that they, you know, kind of emerging markets for companies like Aprilia. So yes, it does have that, but it has the twin spar aluminum frame. It's got the Aprilia ATC. It's got the 270-degree crank engine. It's got the chassis composure that you come to know and expect from an Aprilia. So no, this bike is not just a generic world bike with an Aprilia name on it. This is a true Aprilia that just happens to be made in Italy. All right, guys, so let's talk about what's the competition for a bike like this. What other bikes in this category would you be looking at if you're looking for an entry level? An entry level naked sports bike. So let's start with Yamaha. Yamaha's got a couple different bikes. They've got the MT-03, which is basically a naked version of the R3, and it doesn't make near the horsepower, and it doesn't look nearly as good. And it does come in cheaper than what the 457 Tuono does. And they have the MT-07, which is actually, it's a lot bigger of an engine. It's got a lot more horsepower, and it also costs a lot more too. And so really, Yamaha has two different bikes that you could kind of cross shop with it, but no really direct competitors. Honda has the CB500F, which is their naked version of their 500cc bike. It has a 180-degree engine. It makes less horsepower. It's got a steel frame. I've ridden one, and I had a CB500X, which is the kind of the adventure bike version of that. It's not a very exciting motorcycle, and I would definitely take this 457 over that. So Kawasaki has the Z500, which is the naked version of the Ninja 500, and that 500 motor is a really good motor. It is still a 180-degree crank, so it doesn't have near the character that this one does. The bike also is it's kind of a very kind of futuristic look, and I'm really not personally a fan of the looks of that bike, or even like the Z900, the bigger brother of that. So you do get the TFT screen, but I would definitely still take this bike over either one of those two right there, and it does have a steel frame. Now, probably the closest competitor to this is the Duke 390. And as someone who has had a Duke 390 before, I can tell you that is a heck of a package. And the new motor that KTM has come out with, the new 390, I have in my 390 Enduro R, and I can tell you that is a really good motor that makes a good amount of horsepower, but it makes it up a lot higher. That bike does not have near the low-end torque that this motor here has with this 270-degree crank. Is it a good package? Yes. Is it better than this? Absolutely not. So who is this bike for? So this bike would be an absolute perfect first bike for somebody who's looking for something that's not an MT-03 or any of these other, kind of basic generic small bikes. This would be an absolute great first bike, because what you could do is you could take this, you could put it in rain mode, and what rain mode is going to do is rain mode's really going to turn down that throttle response where it's nice and dull, so a new rider can really learn how to ride the bike. But then once you've got the basics down pat, you can turn it up to sport mode, and you could really have a bike that you can really exploit the full power out of it. So this would make not only a great first bike, but a great second bike. Also somebody who, you're looking for an urban bike, this maybe not a second bike, but I'd say a third bike, a lightweight, fun, around town bike to get around, throw a backpack on. You could take this thing to work. This would make an absolutely awesome, around town bike, kind of urban brawler style. This would be a great bike for that. And someone who just likes Aprilias. I mean, this is a great, if you're one that, you want to collect the whole set. You've got a V4, you've got a 660, and you want the 457. Now, if Aprilia would just put this motor in the Touareg package, which, I mean, they're talking about it, and I think they might have even shown it at the EICMA show. Oh my gosh, this would be such an incredible package if they would put this in a Touareg and put this in an adventure bike platform. This bike would also be, if you're just If you just like motorcycles and you don't, you don't want the large motorcycles anymore, you want something smaller, you're done with the big bikes, a female who wants something that's easy to handle but still is sporty and has got the looks, and it's got the, it's got that soul, it's got that anima. That this is your bike right here. So I'm telling you, so this would make a great first bike. This would make a great second bike. This would make a great third bike. This would make a great around town bike. Would I want to use this for touring the country? No, probably not. But for an around town or a Blue Ridge Parkway bike, man, I'm telling you, this is an awesome package right here.
All right, guys, so we're going to wrap up this review of this beautiful 2026 Aprilia Tuono 457. Now again, our original question was, is an Italian motorcycle made in India still an Italian motorcycle? And to answer that question, we asked 10 questions, and let's recap those. Question number 1, does it look and does it feel like an Aprilia from the moment you walk up to it? It's got that Italian look to it. It's got the sculpted tank. It's got the look. This is absolutely, it looks and it feels like an Aprilia. Question number 2 is, how solid is the build quality compared to Aprilias that are made in Italy? Now, there are definitely some cost-cutting measures. The tires on the bike are not a name brand tire. They're not a Bridgestone or a Dunlop or a Michelin or any of these, really good high-performance tires. You do have a single rotor in the front. The switchgear is exactly the same as what you're going to find on any other Aprilia. The TFT screen is not bonded like what the higher-end models are, so you definitely get some glare off of it. So the quality, is it as solid as an Aprilia made in Italy? I'd say 95% of it. It is 100%. Question number 3, when you fire it up, does it sound like an Aprilia Twin, or does it just sound like a cookie cutter engine that's made by any other manufacturer anywhere else in the world? The answer is yes. With a 270-degree crank, this 457cc parallel twin sounds fantastic. So yes, it sounds like an Aprilia. Question number 4, how does the engine feel in the real world? Well, I can answer that very easily. This is a sweetheart of an engine. You've got 82% of your torque available all the way down to 3,000 RPM, and this thing will chug at 2,000 RPM and it'll sing all the way up to the red line at 10,000 RPM. So this is a very flexible motor. Aprilia did their homework on this motor, and this is an excellent 270-degree crank 457 parallel twin. Question number 5, does the chassis feel alive in the corners like what Aprilia is known for? Absolutely. The aluminum frame, the inverted forks, everything about this bike, it just feels great. Carving on these mountain roads today, this bike was just planted. It's a combination of lightweight with a lively engine and a suspension that's responsive to the inputs that you give it. This bike feels fantastic, and yes, it feels like an Aprilia in the turns. Question number 6, how well does the engine and the suspension and the chassis and the brakes, how does it give that performance first feel that an Italian bike, specifically an Aprilia, is known for? Now, again, let's recap. We've got some no-name tires, and there was a couple moments today where they felt a little sketchy, and I saw the traction control kick on. So definitely the tires that come from the factory are a bit of a letdown. We do have a single 320 millimeter rotor in the front with bi-bree calipers. The caliper actually felt pretty good. I would love to have a second rotor in the front, but I understand why they did it for cost-cutting measures. The suspension, while we don't have any adjustments besides for preload front and rear, the chassis felt nice and firm, and it felt very responsive. Again, you still have an aluminum frame. This bike still feels performance first, and maybe it might come at the expense of slower speeds in town. It might be a little bit harsher, but on these mountain roads, Blue Ridge Parkway 226A, it definitely has that Aprilia performance first feel to it. Question number 7, is the riding position all day comfortable? So The reason someone would get a naked bike over a Tuono over an RS, be it the V4, the 660, or the 457, is a more comfortable riding position. And I can tell you, with the foot position here, with the nice high handlebars, this bike is all day comfortable. The seat, while not being extremely padded, it is very comfortable, it's very supportive. You got a little bit of room to move around. It's nice and wide enough where you're not really getting any hot spots on your butt. This bike is all day rideable. Question number 8, do the electronics feel like they are properly integrated, or does it just feel like they put them on there to check a box off? I can tell you guys, since having to use the traction control a couple times today, the traction control feels great. The ABS is not overly intrusive. It does its job. The 5-inch TFT, again, it does have a little bit of glare to it, being that it's not a bonded screen, but it's got tons of information and it's very usable. You've got backlit gauges. Aprilia did their homework on this bike and they put tons of technology in it, but you're not paying the price for all that technology. This bike comes in at $65.99 MSRP for the Tuono. That is a hell of a deal, and you get a ton for your money, especially with the electronics package. Question number 9, does it give that Aprilia feel? Does it combine the passion and the performance, what Aprilia is known for? 100%. You get the great 457 engine, you get the nice responsive chassis, you get the flickability, you get all that 457 engine has. Again, it's not a screamer. It's not supposed to be a screamer. And then in that category, it's, it competes if it's not the absolute best in the category. But it still gives you that combination of passion and performance. You can see that Aprilia didn't just tell Piaggio in India, hey, go build us a bike for the world market. You can see the Italian in this bike. You can feel it. You can see that everything kind of comes together to give you that Aprilia feel. And question number 10, does it feel like an Aprilia built for the world, or does it just feel like another bike that's made in a factory in India? This feels like an Aprilia. Everything about this bike, from the way it rides, from the way it sounds, from the braking, from the turn-in, the flip-in, it feels great. It feels absolutely. This is an Aprilia made for the world, not an Indian bike with an Aprilia name on it. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap up our comprehensive review of this 2026 Aprilia Tuono 457. Now, the question that I posed at the beginning of the video is an Italian motorcycle that happens to be made in India, is it still an Italian motorcycle? Does it still have the soul and the characteristics and the charm and the charisma of one made in Italy? And after riding this thing, I say the answer is absolutely yes. This is one of the absolute best naked sport bikes that you can buy today. And the only place that you can get it is right here behind me, T's Eurocycles on Freedom Drive in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're the only place that you can get your Aprilia, you can get your Moto Guzzi, you can get your Vespa in the new bikes. And then look behind me, any sort of used Euro motorcycle, they've got it right here. There's a BMW, there's a Moto Guzzi, there's a Ducati, all within within a throw up in here. And these guys are 5 minutes from the Charlotte Douglas International Airport, right over there. These guys do flying rides. Come see these guys. Come hang out. Come talk. Just talk shop with them. I mean, they absolutely love what they do, and they love motorcycles. And if your thing is more of a Japanese bike, right next door, Team Charlotte Motorsports. They have your Hondas and your Yamahas and your Suzukis and your Kawasaki's. They have personal watercraft. They have side-by-sides. So basically, anything on 2 wheels or 4 wheels, and sometimes even no wheels, this is your place to get it right here. This is your one-stop shop for basically anything motorsports in the Charlotte market. Come see these guys right here. So if you see anything that you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Subscriptions are the absolute ultimate compliment, and share the videos. So thank you guys for watching. God bless, roll tide, and remember, tomorrow needs you. Thanks, guys.